One of the key dimensions of how the old economy works is the orientation and fixation to improving GDP, although we know from statistics that more GDP does not translate in developed countries to more well-being.
Beyond GDP, to some extent, conveys the idea that material development is important up to a point, but beyond that point, we need to look at other indicators and other measures of well-being.
Well, I think it's really talking about changing our economy from something that serves just a few to something that serves the many.
Being able to have these discussions about the challenges between happiness and progress and prosperity, I think that'll be really, really helpful.
I am looking forward to working on this global issue of well-being across national and institutional borders, using dialogue and combining personal and social transformation. I believe that this is not only possible, but vital.
The Global Wellbeing and GNH Lab is a project in which we're working with an international group of 25 participants who've been selected because they're all in some way working on global well-being. And what we're doing is taking them together to really interesting, high potential areas for innovation, such as Brazil and Bhutan, and giving them a lot of support and space for them to reflect and then prototype, innovate new projects and new ideas when they go back home.
If this is a tiny little microcosm of how to do things differently, I think that will be a hell of a spark for the future.
What the lab is trying to do is say, let's take people out of their normal environment, their comfort zones, take them to places where they can be inspired or challenged or provoked, where they can connect with like-minded people, and where they can see things in a way that they haven't before. A lot of the first part of the journey is about sensing, taking in what's out there, not coming there with your answers, with your preconceived notion of what you're going to see and go, aha, okay, check, 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 that's what I expected. But rather to really go there with an open mind.
We took our time to be in the community, to walk around, to engage with very different levels of the community, from the police to local inhabitants to civil society people who were trying to bring about change.
What was surprising was the inspiration. So we saw entrepreneurs, we saw a community that was trying to deal with gang violence and crime and come up with unconventional solutions to that. So we experienced the urbanization, the tensions in these very unequal societies, and then we radically and very quickly moved into the Amazon. We had amazing conversations there where people were able to share the kind of work that they were doing and what they were hoping to see come out of the lab.
We have to have the corporate social responsibility trying to change the system from within, while we have people creating different models that drive the market to say, we're going to choose that if you guys don't change.
When we stepped off the boat, we got to meet people in communities that were working to really live in balance with nature and engage with the modern world in a way that preserved their values and their indigenous knowledge.
The sense of deep and profound relationship between people and nature was very important to see. Both the ability to work with the natural environment to produce goods or to sustain livelihoods, but also the sense of how that held community ways of being that seemed to be essentially sustainable. An appreciation started to emerge about what makes a community that is well. Money per se, what we found, was not the primary driver for happiness and well-being.
A lot of our sessions in the mornings involved people sitting with a practice of mindfulness or meditation, just to resist the urge to constantly fill the space up with ideas and thoughts.
Mindfulness is about reclaiming the power of our attention and directing it intentionally so that our attention is aligned with our intentions. What we measure is what we are attentive to, therefore the importance of the indicators. If we shift what we measure, we become aware and attentive to other things, and therefore there can be a system shift.
I think for a lot of people, being taken to some really challenging and also inspiring parts of Brazil opened up their thinking about their own work. To come back with fresh perspective and with maybe some courage and some inspiration to do something differently. And I think that's what we started to see happening in Brazil.
There are many attempts to develop new ways to measure progress and development, but the only country in the world who's trying to do it on a country-wide level is Bhutan. It's a unique opportunity to observe what are the challenges, what works, what doesn't work. So in a way, although it's a very small country, what's happening here is very important because it is some kind of an experiment the rest of the world can learn from.
Within Bhutan, the government has really been promoting gross national happiness as a way of measuring how the country is doing, not just in relation to economic growth, which is what GDP would reflect, but how the nation as a whole is doing in terms of well-being and happiness. The second half of the lab brought all the participants to Bhutan for a deep immersion experience in GNH. So we started off with a welcoming and a ceremonial tree planting, and we were really lucky to have Her Royal Highness Ashi Khedsang Wangchuk to open and welcome us here.
Bhutan seeks to balance equitable and sustainable economic development with environmental conservation, cultural promotion, and good governance. This is why we welcome the opportunity to work with distinguished global leaders and thinkers such as you.
We then had a series of speakers from the government and policy level.
When the Prime Minister talks about Bhutan's leadership role in developing this new economic paradigm or new development paradigm, he very often uses the term, he says it has a purpose, and its purpose is human happiness and the well-being of all life forms.
We have trained all our school leaders and deputy school leaders in infusing ideas of gross national happiness into the overall life of the school.
Then it was going to the field and visiting a number of institutions, civil society organizations, to see the way it's implemented on the ground level.
We opted to reduce plastic waste by refusing to eat packaged food on all days except Wednesday.
We had been exposed more to the outer side of GNH, policy making and its implementation in the country. And now we wanted to encourage the participant to reflect what does it mean for them personally in terms of values, in terms of life's purpose, meaning. So we organized this walking pilgrimage to Tiger's Nest, which is one of the sacred places in Bhutan. The pilgrimage is always at the same time an outer journey to a physical place in space, but always also an inner journey.
That question of inner transformation, I think, is central to the journey of this lab, to really understand what is it that we need to shift in ourselves, how do we model that or inspire it for others, and then how can that become a movement for social change. One of the explicit goals of the Global Wellbeing and GNH Lab is to create living examples of how we can actually model this change in the world. And that's based on the idea that we need to prototype, we need to try out new things, revise them, go back to the drawing board, and then start to see how they can be scaled up.
Prototyping ideas may be an advancement of a piece of work that we are already doing. For others, it's taking an idea that we had already and move them into action in order to use them as an instrument for institutional and system-wide transformation.
5 prototypes emerged from the discussions and workshops. One prototype looks at ways to raise awareness of the Genuine Progress Indicator movement in the United States and assist its continued growth.
GPI in the States has 3 specific components. One component is supporting all the states who are moving in this direction.
Another prototype aims to create a transformation hub in Brazil, which would bring people and organizations together to work towards a more sustainable, equitable and just society.
That hub takes us to other hubs, and you connect all these, you create a whole movement of mindful actions.
The GNH Center Bhutan prototype further develops ideas around manifesting Bhutan's unique balanced development philosophy of gross national happiness, which seeks to integrate equitable and sustainable socio-economic development with environmental conservation.
This is the GNH Center's programming elements, of which we realize that there's really kind of an international program part and then a local Bhutan program part.
The GNH in Business prototype focuses on how to inspire business leaders to integrate well-being into their work.
Our prototype is essentially to engage business leaders with this purpose, to change the way we frame and conduct our economy from us versus them to a business value proposition which builds community by better serving society and nature and engaging the creativity and potential of all citizens.
Whose development is a prototype that sets out to change the way Indian policymakers think about and pursue development and create a shift from rapid economic growth with little regard to its quality or distribution to an economy that prioritizes the well-being of citizens and protects rather than exploits the environment.
This isn't built on GDP, it's an absolutely stark challenge to GDP.
This is actually proving that GDP doesn't work for the people.
On the last day, it felt like as if we were playing a symphony together and all these different instruments had come in a certain harmony.
We have really come to some concrete ideas for how to ground going beyond GDP in real practical projects.
All these leaders and change agents go back to Brazil, to the US, to India, or wherever they are situated. And there they work and do action with what they have come up with in the lab, in the process so far.
It's given me a sense of strength, a sense of motivation to keep going forward, and most excitingly, it's given me this amazing new network of wonderful friends and colleagues and peers who I'm really looking forward to working with in the future.
It's made me realize that true system transformation really starts with individuals, that the ability to transform the economy or transform our healthcare system ultimately depends on the ability and willingness of the individuals within the system to transform themselves.
I still feel that from this lab, we human beings, we still have a hope for the future. That is what I came to know.